So I'm with Luke. This is the first of these wonderful interviews with a bunch of cool people that are running law firms. And we were just having a chat, weren't we, Luke, before we formally hit record. But you're in the beautiful Sunshine Coast. We're both family lawyers. So I think we're going to have a lovely conversation here because we've got some real synergies in how we both think and what we both do. Before we get stuck into these questions, though, I have a podcast. I always start this podcast with this same question. So I want to do the same for these interviews, which is, if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be?
That's an interesting question. Probably an entrepreneur of some sort. I love property. I love renovating. So maybe I'd be like a contestant on The Block, but without the cameras around.
Love that. And would you be renovating in like what do they do it in, a 12-week period or something, like under pressure, or would we be tinkering away on weekends?
I think it'd be great to be able to do it in a short turnaround.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Try to squeeze in a few in each year. Yeah.
That's a really interesting one. So does that tell me that outside of law, you do enjoy doing those sorts of things?
Yeah, I think so. It could be anything as mundane as mowing the yard. It's that sense of satisfaction I get. Yeah. I've taken something from the start that wasn't so good, and then you can see with your own eyes the difference and the end result, and feel a sense of accomplishment from that. So I think that's probably maybe a more grandiose way of saying the same sense of feeling that you get when you mow the yard is when you renovate a property and you can see the fruits of your labour at the end of it.
It's a really interesting point, though, because I think one of the challenges with the work that we all do as legal professionals is you don't get that moment where you can stand back and go, look at my beautiful lawn, because so much of what we're doing is not a tangible here to here thing, is it? You know, we write letters, we do documents, there's all of this stuff. But my husband's a builder, and I often talk about the same with him, that he builds these massive buildings, and at the end of it, he can drive past and go, we did that.
Yeah.
And I think that is in part something that as lawyers, we have to hunt for those signs that we've mown the lawn and built the building and done the thing, you know, that we've been successful in that, because they're not obvious. They're not right there in front of us all the time. And that's one of the things that I find makes this work a little bit tricky sometimes, is just not always being able to see the good things really obviously.
Yeah, I think that you do have to, because it's so emotionally draining at times, you do need to make sure that you've got a benchmark in your own mind about what success looks like in terms, and it might be different for everyone, I think, in terms of what they're doing it for, what's driving them. But I think for me and probably most family law practitioners, it is that sense of helping somebody, and that benchmark is most clearly expressed, I think, when the client communicates their thanks and gratitude to you. And you know, we had a client the other day who came back and gave some feedback to say, 6 months ago, you and this wasn't me, I can't take the credit, one of our lawyers, and said to her, 6 months ago, you told me something, and it was that the best thing that you can do to move forward is to empower yourself. And she said, I've opened up a florist and I'm loving it. And it's this lady who was always hesitant, I suppose, about being bold enough to move forward on her own. So to see someone who's taken that advice and had a positive mind shift is really, really satisfying.
Yeah, there's the mowing of the lawn moment, isn't it? When you get to see, you know, all that hard work led to a place. Yeah, I think that is, you're right, that is the most rewarding part of being a family lawyer. And the key there is remaining in contact with people so that they tell you the good outcomes that come after you've signed off on those settlement documents or whatever it might be. But it's so true. Like, I'm still in connection with people that I acted for almost 20 years ago now. And it's extraordinary just being able to sort of follow on the sidelines where life takes them. I do so enjoy that. It is the piece that keeps us all going. Yeah. Why run a law firm for you? What was it that led you to say, yes, I want to start a law firm?
I made the natural, and I think part of it was I've always had an interest in owning a business and being an entrepreneur. Even before I decided to study law, I always liked the idea of building something of my own. And I eventually became a partner in the firm that I was with, and that has its own challenges, particularly in a partnership where in that instance there was 10 partners, and so there's a lot of strong personalities, and a lot of restrictions, I suppose, that you don't have when you go and open up your own practice. So you're granted all of this freedom all of a sudden to do things exactly how you want them to be done, and without having to put them to a vote. So I think for me it was the autonomy, and again I think that's certain personalities. Certain people gravitate towards that because of their personalities, and for me, I definitely love having the autonomy to do things my way.
And tell us a little bit about your firm. So I know that you are based up on the Sunshine Coast, which is a stunning part of Queensland. What led you to be there? And, you know, just describe, I guess, a little bit for those listening, what the firm is like.
Yeah, thanks. It was really we were ready for a sea change. There was an opportunity. At that time, I was still a partner in the previous firm, and we had made a decision to open up a satellite office on the Sunshine Coast. And so I begrudgingly put my hand up to come and man the office and open up that branch. And my wife Amanda and I were ready for a sea change. As I say, my sister had already recently moved to the Sunshine Coast as well. So, and my other sister had made plans to relocate at that stage as well. So it just seemed like it, you know, there were a few things that lined up all the time. And we had visited my sister who was living here at the time and loved the place. Beautiful beaches, as everyone knows. And so it was a very easy choice to move here. And also it's been for some years now a very it's a place where there's a lot of growth at the moment. As well. It seems to me that and I haven't seen the data, but it seems that the Sunshine Coast must be one of the fastest growing areas in Australia, not just Queensland. And so that's good, probably to a point, although I'm not enjoying the increased traffic that's coming along with it.
Traffic.
But we love it on the Sunshine Coast. It's, you know, it's an hour and a bit to drive to Brisbane, and we've got all of these beautiful beaches. So yeah, it's very easy to love living here.
And your firm itself, you're just doing family law, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's right. When I first opened the practice 4 years ago, it was originally doing injury law, wills and estates, and family law. But over time, and it was originally Shanahan Law, and then over time it gradually morphed into Shanahan Family Law, doing exclusively family law, which is what we do now.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? How you know, particularly when you're opening, you're like, I've just got to make this work, and then you niche. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, and it's also I think those three practice areas are very similar, I think, in the sense that you're dealing with people, not business owners, and so it wasn't necessarily that I didn't like those other two areas of law, but I found that it was the same sort of clients and more of them coming in. It seemed that we could help a lot more in the family law space. Injury law in particular is very competitive. There's a lot of, as you well know, there's a lot of competition in that area of law, and so we just naturally gravitated toward family law, and haven't looked back.
No, that makes so much sense. Tell me, the last let's say 2 years, because it is almost 2 years, everything in the business world and the world generally has been completely upside down. How did you find, particularly that early stage, navigating the changes as a result of the COVID pandemic? Were you already working in such a way where it wasn't such a difficulty, or did you have to make some big changes in your firm?
No, I wouldn't say we've made big changes. There are certainly a lot of industries outside of the profession of law that have undergone more significant changes than we have, and it has been disruptive, of course, but I think that comparatively, when we measure ourselves as a profession against other areas of business and industries, it's probably not been disrupted as much. I think from a business sense, the disruption hasn't been huge. I mean, there's been a lot more, as you know, court appearances electronically, and you know, the social distancing and all the rest of it that comes along with the pandemic. But I think the biggest impact has been probably in everyone's lives personally, which may have a spillover or carryover effect in the professional world. And we were talking before about, you know, if you stay tuned into the mainstream media too long, it can have a detrimental effect to your psyche and your state of mind. And so I've made the decision personally to switch it off and or minimise my time spent on that, because I need to maintain that equilibrium, and for me, that's what works for me. So it has been disruptive and difficult. We've all experienced difficulty, and I think I haven't seen the data on this, but every second person is saying to me, you know, their friends and their friends of friends are experiencing more relationship trouble since COVID, and no doubt all of the restrictions and lockdowns and mandates and all the rest of it have had effect on people and their relationships as well, which is causing some trouble, which is obviously distressing to see. And we can only hope, I suppose, that things get back to normal, or things get better, at least, in the near future.
And it makes a lot of sense that the minute we add a whole lot of unexpected life pressure to situations that might already have had some cracks, that things just get really difficult. And I think that's been my experience as well in family law, is most sadly, it's just peaked in terms of workflow, which has been really hard. And I think you're quite right that whilst it may not have had a direct business impact in the same that it would have had for, say, hospitality businesses or those industries that have been very directly affected, the impact has been very human. And I know that just within myself, the exhaustion, and then how that flows into how we show up, and particularly our role as leaders in businesses and all of these things. I guess one of my next questions of you, and it in part fits in with what we're talking about, and in part is something that's so important regardless of pandemics, is what tools, what do you do? What are your sort of routines and rituals around keeping yourself functioning at the highest possible level so that you can show up as the best possible version of yourself at work, at home, all of these things? Because I think this is such an important part of running a successful business.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that there's more of a responsibility to maintain that state of mind where you've got, when you're occupying a leadership role, and because it's not just you who is being impacted if you don't have the right state of mind. There's so many others around you that will be detrimentally affected as well. So I'm acutely aware of that. I love tennis. That's one of my outlets, and so I do that. I meditate as well. I think that it's important that you look after your support group as well. So you know, I make sure that my wife, my family members, my close friends, that they are being looked after by me. Like, I think that if they're good, then they can give back and support you. So I mean, I suppose it may be counterintuitive when you're faced with difficult external circumstances that you react in such a way as to go and support other people. But it makes perfect sense when you think about it that these are the people that are going to be your safety net and boost you up. So if you can make sure that they're okay, then they're going to be there and assist you through any of those moments in life where you have a sense of doubt or reluctance to move forward. Then I find my wife in particular is really good at getting me back into the right headspace, and obviously she can't do that as well if I'm not making sure that I'm doing the same for her as well. And I also listen to a lot of motivational videos on YouTube as well that seem to get you fired up again when you don't feel like, don't have the energy for any particular day or week, but they get you going again. Yeah.
There's some great tips in that answer. Thank you so much. And tennis, we're in the midst of the Australian Open, so you must be loving this time of year. Am I right?
Loving it. Yeah. Sad to see John Millman and got out last night, unfortunately. But hopefully some of the Aussies can go deep into it.
It's almost funny, isn't it, after the drama last week with tennis and that these things are managing to happen in amongst all of what's going on. It's a little bit of normality in the madness.
Yeah. It's great. It's great to see. So yeah, I think you do. I think you do need to find your release, really, don't you? I don't know about you, but and it doesn't really matter what particular thing it is, but if you don't have something outside of work, then it can be tough, I think. Yeah.
And you need many things outside of work, don't you? And exactly as you've just said, tennis for your physical and mental health, your family for your spirit and soul. Like, we have to invest in these things. And what I find particularly in life as lawyers is those work deadlines, those client demands, they are never ending. And you could sit there 24/7 and you would still never get to the bottom of that list. And I think one of the most important tools that any young practitioner can develop is the ability to say, today is finished, leave it and start again tomorrow. And that is really hard often for the type of people that we are. We're very high performance. We really get satisfaction out of doing our very, very best and meeting all of these demands. And that contradiction almost between needing to do those things but being able to turn it off is such a skill. Coming back to you and your personal habits, you've given again so many wonderful answers already. I sense you must have some internal rituals and routines around how you manage the stress, the turning off, the turning on, all of these things. Books, role models, what is it for you?
I think it's at the end of the day, I mean, there are certain little rituals that you can undertake, but I think that more important than the little rituals is the belief behind the thing that drives those rituals. And I think my underlying belief, which drives my rituals, is that difficulties arise in life. They're inevitable. They're going to be there in everyone's lives, no matter who you are. We all experience them, but there's two different ways in my mind that you can react or deal with those difficulties. You can either choose to let them control you, or you can maintain control in the way that you respond to those difficulties. So I've always try to remind myself that when a hardship does come along, or you're feeling a bit stressed, that ultimately, if you choose to feel like a victim, or you choose to succumb to that feeling, then it's not going to be a good outcome for me. I've had some experience or knowledge with knowing that that's not the way to deal with those sorts of problems, and they're going to continue to come. As I say, those hardships will always be there. But I've learned to tell myself that you need to deal with it in such a way as that it's not going to derail you. And I've developed, I think, as a result of that mindset, a great sense of determination. So when a hardship comes along, I feel strong and centered within myself that it's not going to knock me off balance. I will ultimately choose the way in which I respond to it and continue to pursue my goals and be determined to continue along that path, irrespective of how severe the hardship or the obstacle might be. So I think you can have little rituals, but you also need to have that underlying belief as well, to make sure you stay strong on your path and continue to achieve goals. And even just setting goals is so important, I think. If you don't have a good set of goals set for yourself, then that's probably the first thing that you should do, so that you're striving for something. I think if you don't, and I've had periods of my life as well where I have chosen not to set goals, and you probably know yourself that the difference between a life where you're striving for something and a life when you're not is there's a huge gulf in those mindsets.
I think, oh gosh, you've just hit the nail on the head. I said to you before we were recording as such that since COVID hit, I feel like I've been treading water. Sort of, I've been doing things, but I've the mindset piece is, you're so right, because I've had this sort of mindset of, once this is over, then, and as a result, I felt like I've really held back on doing the things that I enjoy doing and setting those big goals and pushing things forward. And this year I've really come in with a mindset of, it is what it is. It's not going to change anytime soon. So set your goals and live accordingly, regardless. Like, don't sit in this sort of no man's land. And I've just felt such relief just going back into that headspace. Maybe that's the entrepreneurial nature of both of us. Maybe that, I don't know what it is, the leadership, but wholeheartedly agree with you that how we face up to the challenges that come in life, many of which sit well outside of the realms of business, but impact heavily on our businesses, is the make or break, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, for sure. So you definitely have to keep pushing forward and resist the urge, I think, to have that, I'll put it on the back burner and wait.
I think too, it for me comes back a little bit to rethinking failure. In business, I've made so many mistakes. So many mistakes. I've lost lots of money with some of my crazy ideas, and many would say, well, that's a complete failure. And yet I look at some of those things where I've lost money or done whatever I've done, and there's so many interesting and good things that came out of those terrible failures. And again, that mindset piece that you've mentioned is so important in all of this, and rechecking in that and growing it. You mentioned YouTube and all of the wonderful, personal development things that we can find now, podcasts. There's just so much stuff, TED Talks, and you can just be constantly learning. And I think that's such an important thing for all of us that are leading organizations, is to forever be in that space of, okay, who else can teach me something? What else can I do?
Yeah. The constant search for betterment, I suppose.
Yeah. It's a funny one. All right. I want to ask some tech questions, because it's no secret that the whole reason you and I are here is we're both users of the Smokeball technology platform. And what I have a vested interest in this question. I want to know everyone's Smokeball hacks. What's your favorite thing about it? Because I'm going to be confident that you will have different ideas to me, and then I'm just going to steal everyone else's ideas. It'll be like my shortcut to learning more about Smokeball. That's my thoughts on this.
Well, we're relatively new into Smokeball, so I think it's probably the reverse. You could
probably not. My team probably could. That's why I'm doing this. I'm like, oh, what can you teach me?
But I think, I mean, we're certainly, and me in particular, I'm certainly no expert at it, but I do like Smokeball. I'm glad we made the switch over, and it provides all of the needs that we have. You know, for all of the staff, it's a good, easy to use document management system. It's got all of the accounting functionalities that we require, and the thing, I suppose, for people like us that it's good for is that, and also the solicitors, the producers, is that you can see how you're performing, your productivity levels. You can get reports and snapshots on your screen to. And I was just talking about this yesterday, how it's so important in order to maintain productivity levels to use that old saying, to take care of the cents so that the dollars can take care of themselves. So if you're looking at your daily productivity levels and your weekly productivity levels, and you're constantly striving to hit those targets, then you know that your annual targets are going to be met. And Smokeball is good in the way that you can easily see within your dashboard how you're performing in terms of your productivity levels. You know, whether you're meeting the targets for billables or time spent, or things of that nature. And Smokeball does a good job, I think, of allowing you to see that in a glance.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's some just really smart, simple tools, aren't there, where there's graphs, or, you know, you don't have to go mining through numbers. It's just, there it is, really easy to see. I completely agree.
Yeah, and I think there's also some integrations as well that are coming on board. I think Family Property recently came on board, and there's a few others that are on the cards as well. Yeah. So it's constantly evolving. But
yeah, that's what I was about to say to you. Don't you find with technology that we probably use 10% of what it actually offers? It's like, we need a Smokeball consultant in our office going, do you know when you do that, you can actually do that, and it would be easier?
Well, I was thinking the same thing. I need one of those as well.
Yeah. Little Smokeball pigeons that just sit behind you and go, oh, no, that's not how we meant to do that. You're meant to do it this way. There's a report for that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What other technology do you have in your practice?
I'm pretty old school, I suppose, in that sense. In terms of property matters, I think Excel spreadsheets is probably.
It's my calculator. I was about to pull it up and put it on screen. I'm still like paper, pen, calculator.
The height of my superpower in property matters is an Excel spreadsheet.
Yep. You and me both. Yep. But I'm not good once it has to do something more than add up or subtract. The minute it needs formulas that go beyond that, I start going, oh.
But we are a paperless office, so I can pat myself on the back in that regard. But in terms of technology, look, I suppose we're not very cutting edge, to be honest. We're not ahead of the curve by any means, and I think that, I mean, we're certainly not a large organisation. There are plenty of organisations that are larger than us and have the staffing and the ability to be able to invest time and money in getting ahead of the curve in terms of technology. But we're all so busy that we really don't have the time to go out and be market leaders in terms of grasping new technology. We're probably more in the category of followers. So once it's established, it's tried and true, then we adopt it. We're late adopters, I would say.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, Luke, either, in this sense. You started this conversation by reaffirming that success is different for all of us. And it sounds to me like you have built a business that fits for your life and the life of those that work in it and your family and the people that matter to you. And what I'm hearing in your answer to that question is we have simple, sensible tools that do what we need them to do. We don't overthink it. We don't have lots of pieces. it does what it does, and we run a successful business. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, that we don't have to be out there building stuff and try to jump ahead. We can run a deeply successful business peacefully in the corner that only the people that are doing business with it even need to know about. And it achieves the goals that we set. And it comes back to where you began this conversation around, where am I trying to get to? What matters to me right now? What does all of that look like? And making your decisions accordingly. So anyway, that's what I hear when you answer that.
And I think also you've got to be careful about how much time you invest on searching for these new things, because there's a time where it becomes too much, and you're no longer producing as effectively as you can in your business. And I've been guilty of that in the past, in going out and exploring the latest technology and software, and I think you need to carve out a little bit of time, but not too much so that it's detracting from your own productivity levels. But I suppose that's another feature of Smokeball as well, which is quite good, which is the ability to create your own precedents as well, with fillables. And they've also got, as you probably know, they've got their own bank of precedents, which is quite extensive as well, before you to add your own personalised one to it.
I think the other feature that I love about the brand and the team generally is, coming back to your point of it, it can take so much time to go out and find things. Smokeball are going and finding them for us and integrating them back into their product. You mentioned, for example, family property before, which is one of those examples. And there's all these tools that are forever being integrated for us, so we don't have to do that work. And I so appreciate that, because I'm no tech guru. I go back to saying my knowledge of Smokeball will hate me saying this. My knowledge of the Smokeball technology is probably like Z level. But it does everything I need it to do at Z level. Hence why we need the Smokeball person that's going to sit with you and I and tell us how to do all the other stuff one day. But anyway, I think your point is so valid, that we could spend hours, and there are so many grand, shiny tools out there, but we probably don't need many of them to do what we're doing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. At the end of the day, we're providing a service. I think we can streamline processes to a certain extent, but it's always going to maintain that same facet of always going to be, we're a service orientated profession. We provide advice. If there's a technology that can come along and shave a little bit of time off the way that we do things, and reduce the costs and enable those savings to be passed along to the clients, fantastic. And we adopt those. That's my motto here. We adopt those. We don't remain ignorant to them, but we maintain and focus on helping people as the primary goal.
Yeah. Final question. I guess if you were talking to a younger version of yourself, what learning, if you could change something, when you think back, what would you say to yourself 20 years ago about life in the law and running a business?
I think it's probably not it's probably more an attitude, really, more than anything. And it's an attitude that I've developed over time, but one that probably would have helped me more had I adopted it earlier in life. And I suppose if I'm talking to myself 20 years ago, I would say determination is key. You need to identify what it is that makes you happy, that you want in your life, and go for it as hard as you can, without being discouraged, without being distracted, and pursue that as hard as you can without compromise. But I also say this when I talk about this particular topic: there has to be some guiding rules around that as well. You can't go out, and I've got 3 young girls, and I try to impart some knowledge to them every now and then if I can. And I often talk to them about, setting goals and achieving them and going for them. And I say that there are certain parameters, though, that you have to abide by when you're pursuing. You can't blindly pursue a goal at any cost, and you have to make sure that you don't hurt anyone along the way. You remain respectful of everybody, and considerate, and you consider other people, and you don't harm them in the pursuit of your goals. But aside from that, if you're not hurting anyone, you're respecting everybody, I say go as hard as you can at what it is that you want to get.
I love that. Thank you so much. It has been a joy having a chat to you today. I've really appreciated it.
Yeah, thanks, Clarissa. I've loved having a chat with you and picking your brain as well.